would like very much to dedicate this talk especially to discuss the out-of-body experience. I'm going to take your questions and I'm going to hopefully reply interesting cases that you are going to tell me about, because it's not easy to interpret our out-of-body experiences. The more we know about the topic and the more we have experiences, the more we will be able to figure it out. But it's not true that it's simple or that we get at a certain point that we always know every case. So this is what we have to address here. It is so important that we are able to interpret our experiences. It's not true that all of us, in every case, in every experience, in every condition, we know exactly what is going on. There are experiences that, even though we are quite lucid, quite conscious outside the body, sometimes we may see a structure or an event that we have a hard time interpreting. Because since we are not talking about a physical world that we kind of think we know well, we sometimes see things that we are indeed seeing it, but we are not being able to decipher or to make sense of what we are seeing. So hopefully with our talk and discussions here, we are going to be able to have more clues. I would like to mention some researchers on this area. One of them is Robert Krukl. I admire so much his work. Those of you who have watched my TEDx talk, you have heard me talking about him, because Robert Krukl did a lot of compilation of cases, but cases from people who were not informed about the out-of-body experience. They didn't know what the phenomenon was, most of them at least. Some of them had only one experience in their lifetimes. And he started just compiling experience. And with all of that compilation, he, by himself, even though he'd never had one out-of-body experience, as far as I know, he started putting together what would be the probable mechanisms and structures that we can see when we are outside the body. That is a very broad discussion, how the non-physical or astral world is formed. And an interesting discussion, if one day you want, we can go through it here. But what happened is that with the events that Robert Krukl reported to us, we started being able to see some common points. One of the things that I love so much when I have, for example, a private session with someone and they come and tell me, look, I never did any course, but I know you study about the out-of-body experience and I would like to share some of the things that I never shared with anybody. Maybe you can explain to me what is going on. And then when they start talking to me, and I have a few of them that I even pointed out in my list because it's amazing, and I have a few of them that just comment exact the same type of experience as was observed in those so many cases studied by Robert Krukl, in these so many cases that we hear anecdotally here and there, and especially from people who come to the International Academy of Consciousness courses, that I am facilitating these courses for 26 years. So we see that there is a very interesting coherence among all of these accounts. Having said that, what we want to do here is to try to bind together all of the big amount of information that we have, data accumulated that we have, with, at the same time, our own experiences, and try to start making sense of our own experiences and of classical, common, average experiences. I don't know if an out-of-body experience can ever be called average or common, but I think it can be called one type of experience that is more witnessed. People report more, sorry for that. People report more that specific type of experience. So I think that is one of the things that we can study. Give me just a moment, please. I'm going to adjust something here because, okay, I had a heater here by my side and it's warming up too much, so that is distracting me. And also, myself, but also my partner, we did several research studies together. I did some by myself, and we have other researchers at the International Academy of Consciousness who did few research about out-of-body experience. And what we observe, what we notice, is that there are some common cases, and those are the knowledge is the one I want to be able to share here with you when interpreting out-of-body experiences. It illustrates a classic experience, typical experience, but one of those in which, by being outside the body, we can taste a level of lucidity, awareness, that is much higher than our maximum here in the physical life. And understanding that is very important. Because the key thing, if you ask me, Nancy, what's the one key thing to master the out-of-body experience? It would be interpreting the level of lucidity that we manifest outside the body. Leaving the body, many people do, but most of the times, they do not know if that is a dream, if it's something else. Maybe it was a lucid dream. I have heard of astral projection, maybe an astral projection. But that means the experience was not fully conscious. And I think once we can just figure out and to ourselves classify our experiences in terms of degrees of lucidity, that helps us a lot, because we'll be able to trust what we have seen and what we have witnessed to the letter, or we will know, here some of my thoughts or maybe oniric image of dream penetrated during this experience, and I cannot fully trust what I have seen in that experience. So I think this is super important. Now, going here to the experience, can we jump into that? Yes. And I want to mention to you, and I'm going to try and share here in my screen. I hope I managed to. Give me just a tiny second here. Oops, yes, I am there now. I hope you can already see me. And what I'm sharing here is that I have an area in my website, especially for you to tell me your experiences. And then from time to time, I pick some experiences to discuss here. I usually discuss the experiences that they have more thumbs up. I have many more experiences reported in Portuguese, just because my work is more known in Brazil, because I am from Brazil. But I have been working around the world for many years. My work had never been so much to the public as we are here now. I love the opportunity that internet is giving to us, but most of the time my work was more like in congresses, conferences, discussing with different scientists, but also addressing the cases that general people would bring to us at the IAC or to myself and teaching. But now we have a platform for this, and I would love to be able to hear more cases. So I created here in my website an area that is called Stories. And I'm going to go there, and I hope you can see me when I do this, because when I click here Stories, of course, I was already in the tab Stories. How is your internet? Oh, internet where I am has never been good, because I am in Portugal now with this COVID crisis. We have been out of the place where we are normally most of the time, which is United States. But we also spend a lot of time in Portugal because of our campus here. And now, in these COVID times, we are here in Portugal. Everything is wonderful, but not internet. So here I am. I think we are together now. So I'm going to click here in Stories, and you are going to see that I have some cases here. Sometimes I translate some of the cases that I receive in Portuguese, but usually here the cases that have been reported in English. So if you would like to report one, you can see here at this corner where it says submit your account. Please send me your experiences, and I will love to read them, to publish them, and hopefully one day to comment deeply here. The case that I have picked for us today is this one that we call here Peace in the Astral Projection and Magnified Vision. And then that's what we are going to continue reading here. For our discussion and for us to be able to follow well, what I am going to do is that I will continue sharing with you my video while I read this account with the paper I have here in my hand. But if you want, you can follow there directly on the website, okay? And what I like doing, and then you tell me if that works for you, is to discuss step by step as we see some significant event to discuss about. So just to start, this is a person who submitted this account saying, this is one of my first experiences of astral projection. And it was extremely positive. And that's why I wanted to share here, because several of the experiences and reactions mostly that he had, I've heard so many times, including not wanting to come back to the body. So let's see how it goes. He tells us, his name is Alexei. So Alexei tells us, after sleeping, I woke up out of the body in a place that is almost impossible to describe, such the beauty of it. There was no buildings or houses, just exuberant nature. One of the things here that I take from this paragraph is that he already woke up outside the body, meaning became aware outside the body. So he did not sense the body disconnecting from the physical body. And I want to emphasize this here, because most people, they tend to put so much value on being able to disconnect lucidly from the physical body, which is very important, of course, because then we have like a triple confirmation. Very important, and a step that we have to learn how to master it. This is part of what we are here to learn. However, that does not mean that if we have not been aware of the moment that we were detaching from the physical body, whatever we experience afterwards is not a valid experience. So in this case, Alexei did not sense himself detaching from the body. And just notice when he was there. There are a few things here that he says. He was lucid, but impossible to describe, such a beauty. There are things that we see outside the body that we have no words to describe. Not because the idea is fuzzy in our minds. Do you know when you dream of something and you want to tell somebody, but it's so awkward that you cannot even report your dream? This is not what we are talking about here. We are talking about an experience that is super vivid. You have the memory of it step by step. You were conscious in every step throughout the experience. However, our physical dictionary that is appropriate to describe our physical life, does not have the words to say what we have in our minds and we want to say. So this is very characteristic of some types of out-of-body experiences. And I wanted to emphasize this type because in this case here we see that the awareness can be higher than our maximum here. So you think for yourself, when is the day that you are super lucid, sharp, your memory works fine, everything is fine, but you have days in which you are not as sharp, but you think now of your sharpest day. Then imagine if that could be 20% more, 30% more. Of course, we cannot imagine that because we have not experienced that. We cannot experience 130 the moment you experience it here. It's your 100. But when we are outside the body, we can have a level of lucidity that is much higher, the maximum we ever can manifest here. So then he tells us, I could feel an inner peace like never before. The feeling I had was that the peace came from the air itself, from the environment. And I love this paragraph that Alexei wrote. Perhaps this paragraph alone made me pick this account. Why? Because when we are really conscious outside the body, it's almost as if we can read information in every corner. Really, it's like whatever you sense is in the air. Sometimes you even pick some level of waves of energy movement. It's not the same energy we are familiar with here, but let's call it energy. But then you sense those waves almost as if you could hear them. And it's very common to have this sort of telepathic perception in the out-of-body experience. It's almost like a reading. You know, psychokinesis, when there are people that they can get an object, and with that object in hand, they verify the energies and they can make a interpretation of the information of the energies there. Same thing in this case here, but the interpretation is of the whole non-physical environment. I have had experiences in which I went to places that I didn't even know there could exist places like that on Earth. Because very different geography, very different sort of architecture, everything very different, weather-wise, in every sense. However, I thought, where is this? And in my mind, bam, I got it. And many years later, like 20 years later, I met somebody from that place. And then I started asking, please, can you describe to me how your place is? And are there structures like this and that? And that it was. So this is called extra-physical, like non-physical astral, extra-physical telepathy, and that works a lot in the out-of-body experience. So Alexei says, I was greeted by a woman, of course a spirit that looked like a woman. I was greeted by a woman who looked to be in a mid-40s and with a wide smile on her face, as if she knew in advance the experience I was going to have in moments from there. It was all new to me, and I was flying a few feet above the ground. So that's how his experience started. And then he had something that he called the expanded perceptions. He says, there was several mountains-like structures here, some of them with what appeared to be a green vegetation, but others with vegetation that I never saw before, of color that would remind a golden blue. On top of another elevation, I observed many verdant trees. I do not know if you are familiar with these or ever heard about these, but there are cases in which we can see hues of colors outside the body that we do not have the same here, or at least our eyes cannot pick, or it's not part of our culture to identify them. So you want to describe a color or something you saw outside the body, but you cannot. So he refers a little bit to that here. Then he tells us, I was very lucid and noticed that the sky was cloudless. Sky, or whatever he would see there that for him was the sky. And curiously, tells him, I had the feeling that there was no atmosphere or air in the place, due to the impression that I didn't need to breathe. Let's remember here that we are talking about someone who has had several out-of-body experiences, but this one that I am reading to you was one of his firsts. So perhaps first, second, third, according to what he describes. So he was surprised to see that there was no sense of weight from the air, because air has some weight. We don't sense here, because it's a constant weight, it's a constant pressure on us because of the level of gravity we have in this planet. But when we are outside the body, Not only we do not have that pressure of gravity, but we do not have air, of course. And then we don't need to breathe. Everything is lighter. Everything becomes like more, gives us more time, space, mental space to see ourselves as we are. And then Alexei tells us, I floated to the top of the mountain, look at the environment and enjoying that indescribable inner peace. And for him, that was the most important thing, inner peace. Everything was very calm. It was so nice being there that I said to myself, this place feels like paradise. I want to stay here forever. Don't want to go back to my body. But you guys know, eventually we come back. We just may remain some seconds or minutes more outside the body, which can be a lot of experiences there. But that is it. But this is not the first time I hear somebody saying, oh, it was so good. Why would I want to go back to my body? But at this moment, when he thought of this, that, why bother going back to the body? He had another interesting episode when he had a magnified vision. So Alexei tells us, then a person I could not see, who was by my side, rubbed my head as a father does to his son. Now, a person who was there, he knew it, but he could not see. And I want to comment on this because there are many, many instances in the out-of-body experience in which the real, more advanced, non-physical or spiritual presence is like a spirit guide or a non-physical mentor, spiritual mentor is present, but we cannot see. But there's no doubt that there is one there, and we are communicating kind of telepathically with our thoughts, basically. So he felt that presence, or became more aware of that presence, and felt that almost like a touch or rubbing in his head. Look at what happened then. He tells us, despite not being able to see it, I felt the friction of the hand in my hair, just as I would feel in the physical body. And of course, that was not a physical touch. But I would like to remind you guys, and we can dedicate a time here to explore why it is like that and what are the consequences of this in our everyday life. But I want you to keep in mind that energy, our energy field, our chakras, our energy body is interacting with the environment the whole time. We sense the physical body, but we also sense energy. And for us, sometimes these things are interrelated. There are individuals who, for example, are so sensitive to energies that sometimes they are in contact with a not so positive energies, at least for them, not so positive, and they can even fall ill, feel nausea, feel real physical reactions because of the energy. But what I'm saying here is that for him, that non-physical touch was so clear, so vivid, that he could recognize as clearly as if it were physical. So I thought there was something for us to understand as well, because this phenomena causes fear in a lot of people who may have some experiences, but because some of the perceptions that they have, that are energetic perceptions, are so clear that they feel as if that could be threatening or a threat to their bodies, to their survival, whilst it is energy. Of course, energy affects us a lot, but we have to be able to distinguish. Here in the physical body, it's much harder because sometimes they come together. Now, Alexei tells us, at this moment, I got a kind of expansion in my sense of vision. Interestingly, I could see everything around me at the same time. I could see all directions or angles at the same time. I could see the sky, the ground, the sides of my body, etc. This happened after the touch of the invisible person. Then I woke up in the physical body. I saw the sunlight coming into my room through a crack in the window, and everything was like indescribable beauty. The sun, the crack, how it entered, that's what he means here. To my surprise, he tells us, somehow I brought all the energy and feeling of inner peace that I felt in that non-physical or astral plane realm, to the point that I could maintain the inner joy and peace for the rest of the day. Here there is another big lesson about the out-of-body experience. Let me come back here with you a bit. First, one thing that I want to mention is that when he could see everything, that produced to him some sort of surprise. It was good, it was beautiful, it was wonderful, but that surprised him. And he wakes up immediately afterwards, most probably because of the surprise. The idea would be that in a case such as this, we are able to keep cool, just observing and analyzing. But of course, all of that feeling of beauty and peace and wow, this is wonderful paradise, even though Alexei was very balanced throughout the experience. But he ended up coming back. Another thing that I want to comment about what he just told us here is that when we have a real out-of-body experience, with real heightened awareness. Look, I'm not talking about being a nice or not nice experience. I'm talking about the level of awareness, lucidity. If we are with a heightened lucidity and we experience this sort of environment with the inner peace and especially what he describes, the expanded awareness and the amplified or magnified vision, this means that this energy comes with us. So it's like waking up. Or during the day, you have that unshakable balance inside of you. But that's not forever. And that is one thing that is important. And he's very clear here. I could maintain the inner joy and peace for the rest of the day. It's the same thing with some energy exercises we do. Allow me a parenthesis. When we do, for example, the velo technique that I teach a lot here because it's a technique that is very complete. It's not the only one that exists in the world, of course, but I think that is very safe for everybody to practice and very complete in its results. But let's say somebody can manage very well and do a certain section of velo that the person is super peaceful, maybe even reach a vibrational state. Now, when we reach a high level, I said high level vibrational state, or a high quality velo technique, then we change our energies to such a level in which even when there are some maybe counterflows, some antagonistic events or energy, it's almost as if everything reaches us in slow motion. It gives us time to react, to be in peace. And that is what is super valid. Somehow, at a young age, Alexei experienced the same. Not because he himself did the velo, or not because he experienced the vibrational state, but because he experienced a similar elevated type of energy, quality of energy during this projection. And then when he comes back, he kind of brings that quality of energy, that information with him. Would be lovely if one experience could change us forever, right? But no such an easy evolution, I guess. Not at least from what I have been studying for so long about these topics. All of us, we need to learn, to master our manifestation, our thoughts, our energy in many different situations. In some, it's easier, in some, it's very hard. Only you know what is easy or hard for you. But whatever is the case, we can improve. And that is the message that we want to leave here. Going back to Alexei, he leaves us a very interesting concluding message as well. And he says that he did a reflection at the end. This experience was a game changer for me. It was strong enough to make me lose the fear of death. Today, I am sure that my life goes on and that there is a lot of good and loving people out there. What a nice conclusion, right? And it's not the first time I hear it. And I have had my experience. And I have heard this from so many people. But we also hear reports of sleep paralysis with not so good energies around, and sometimes experience that seem almost like a nightmare. All of them are possible to happen. It doesn't mean the person is positive or the person is negative. It means in that moment, for whatever circumstance of life, the person, I mean the projector who left the body, tuned with a different level of reality. What we have to learn is how to interpret each of them. Why an environment would have a visual appearance that looks like something similar to Earth? Mountains, trees outside the body? Is it possible that he was seeing actual physical trees that with his non-physical vision he saw in that elevated, sophisticated way? Or was he seeing a completely, fully non-physical environment, meaning is not a real physical place, but that, for whatever reason, has the appearance of a natural setting here of the physical world? Because this sometimes can happen, but there are reasons why. We need to understand, because it's not just, hey, a fantasy, whatever you create, it's there. No, this is 10th% of the reality, and knowledge is key. Finding the proper information for you, to interpret your experience and to be able to grow. Not to conclude it's just a dream when it's a real experience, and not to conclude it's a real experience when it's just a dream. So that's what is important here, and why I wanted to report this case. Now, I'd love to see your question. I hope you enjoyed. When I read this experience, it reminded me of some situations that I have experienced myself. And it was so lovely. So I wanted to share with you this one and comment. But I also had experiences that were very strange. And I can also share them with you here. Okay? You just let me know. You comment in the video. Put in the comments how your experiences are. What type of experience you would like me to discuss. Send me an experience to discuss there through my website. Check what I have there. I have some blogs and I have some articles and news. So let's connect there, okay? And tell me here what is for this channel that you would like. Let me check here your comments and notes. I have a dear friend helping me here today. Her name is Angelica Guidini. I think some of you may know her because she lives in Portugal, and she's the person who takes care here of our IAC campus, which, by the way, is so beautiful now in the winter. It's almost like this projection here. We see that we try to take a picture, but no picture can pick what we see and what we feel in the energy. We are very lucky to be able to have a center that is in such a positive area of the world. The biggest drama we have is some sheep walking around to try to find a nice grass for them to eat. And that's it. It's pretty much as it used to be 1,000 years ago. And in a very positive way, a very pristine area. But Angelica, who is the person who takes care here and contributes to all of that. She's helping us, and she's there communicating with you and selecting the questions. And she transferred to me here in a file that now I will just read your question back to you and answer one by one. Hopefully we have time to answer all of them. Raquel, thank you, Raquel, for being with us. Raquel says, went to my grandmother's house, she has died, and said, I came only to hug you and say that I love you, but I just go awake. When I said that, I felt my body returning and I woke up. Is it a projection? It sounded like a projection, and the way you wrote is not so clear. But I'm going to repeat what I understand here, Raquel, because this is a very common description. That all of a sudden you feel yourself in a place, and it's so clear that it's as physical. And then you saw your grandmother who passed away. And then you hug her. And this thing of the hug, it's so beautiful because outside the body, for some reason, when we meet a loved one who passed, one of the things that people do the most is hugging, hugging, touching, perhaps to touch the energies. And there's a lot of communication in that moment, exchange of energy. But then you hugged your grandmother, but it came to your mind, I come here in physical body, this is her house or the house where she used to live. So how come can I be here? And then you woke up because your surprise brought you back. The details here seem to me like a projection, even though you described briefly, because of these characteristics that are very common to projection. And but of course, only you can know how aware you were and everything. I'm sure some of you who are listening to me there now and watching this video will remember of some of the cases in which you had similar experiences. Not in all cases we see a relative, we will hug, but it's very common. I said we see meaning it's a real, truthful experience. It's not dreaming of the person, because sometimes we have a loved one who passed and we dream frequently of the person with situations that we used to experience together in everyday life. But there are many cases, and that's why I'm bringing this up here, in which the person never dreamed of that parent, for example, father, mother, or grandmother, or whatever, a relative. And the only time is one with this type of experience. So this makes it more probable to be a projection. When the person is used to dream of the deceased one very often, sometimes it's harder for us to be sure. But that's what I can tell you, Raquel. Hopefully it helps you and everyone else who is here with me. I have Dave asking a question. He says, how can we differentiate an intensive lucid dream from a partial lucid out-of-body experience? This, David, is the hardest question you can ask to someone who is studying out-of-body experience. Because look what happens. I will explain, and you will see and conclude by yourself. This line here that I am drawing, and hopefully you can see my hand, is dreams. But this other one here, this is projection. They are different experiences. And dreams come from this side here, not conscious. Projections come from this side, conscious, but they are not the same. But in terms of how conscious we are, they kind of pertain to some level of manifestation of our mental core, our mental body, the mental capacity that we all have that is beyond the physical brain. Now, when we start having a projection that is very lucid, but if it's not as lucid, it's semi-conscious and reduced, it comes here, it starts going towards a type of experience in which we don't control anymore. Therefore, even though it's not a dream, for practical purposes, our lucidity is not there. So you see, the projection navigates in this way. Now the dream, it's all just bunch of information that comes in our brain. Of course, there is some validity in understanding them because it's our subconscious mind. But the out-of-body experience is not our subconscious mind. We can see something that we never knew, never thought of, never became in contact with. This is very important to keep in mind. But then you see, from that very unconscious mind here, we have the dream that starts becoming more lucid, meaning we know we are dreaming. Or for example, David, you dream of the house you used to live when you were a child. And then you listen, but it never looked like that. But we didn't have a window here, meaning in a regular dream, we do not have this type of questioning. So there is this questioning. So the dream starts to gain more lucidity to a point that we completely know we are dreaming. We can control the dream. I decided that my cousin is going to appear. Bah! And we are going now to see ourselves in the beach that we used to go. Bah! This is in your mind. You create something and you appear there. So you kind of is conscious of who you are, but it's almost like a fantasy you are living. You are there, but that's a fantasy. So in a conscious or lucid dream, you can change the outer reality. Now, in the out-of-body experience, you cannot change the outer reality. You can only change the reality inside of yourself. Because you can become more lucid, you can choose to tune with different things, you can work with your energies, change your vibration, end up somewhere else. But if you are in an out-of-body experience and you decide, you know what? I want to make somebody just appear here. Pop! It's not possible because that somebody is sleeping or is projected somewhere else or is completely unconscious inside the body. Or perhaps is during the day and that person is working. So you cannot just create that person there. This logics is what helps us. But when it's an experience here, a dream, or an out-of-body experience here, very easy to distinguish. The more they go towards the middle, the more it's vague. It's not only vague because we have to distinguish a dream and an out-of-body experience. It's vague because the level of lucidity of both are just average. It's not that good, okay? If a dream goes to become more and more lucid, eventually we end up waking up inside the body or outside the body. And that's a good experience we want to have. Good, is that clear, Dave? I hope I could answer. It's not, you see that there are so many factors and I simplified a lot. But there are so many interesting things for us to understand about the connection between the physical and non-physical world, but most importantly, about who we are in this dimension, inside this body, in this family, that is the family of ours now, and who are we also when we are outside the body, in between lives, or in a given projection. That is super important. Give me a moment, please. Thank you. So Mohammed is here asking us, Dear Nancy, hi Mohammed. I see you many times commenting there my videos. Thank you for watching. I often feel the vibrational state by doing velo every night before sleeping. Wonderful. But when trying to do an out-of-body experience, one thing is stopping me all the time, fear to die. It is like my body, my instinct says to me, don't do that, don't go ahead, or you will die otherwise. Once I think that, my vibrational state decreases, and all this special state is cancelled. I do not know how to overcome this fear, even if I know the silver cord is very strong. I totally understand what you are saying, Mohammed, because one thing is to have a theory that is very logical, it makes sense, and you have been studying, and you have partial experiences with that. Probably, Mohammed, you have out-of-body experience in which you remember the experience when you are already out there, like in the case of the experience I read from Alexei, that he only became aware when he was already outside. Here in your case, you have the vibrational state, and you start sensing the disconnection, and then you want to go with all of those steps lucidly, which is wonderful. But it's not easy, Mohammed. Let me tell you that what you are saying here, it's quite common. Conditioning, I'm going to put this word, conditioning. Conditioning is what prevents us the most from leaving the body. Second, only by lack of relaxation. So conditioning means we believe we are the physical body. Okay, I know I'm not. But that's theory, because the experience here is the physical body. You wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror, you see your face. When you eat something that doesn't go well with you, you have your body in a bad shape. If you feel a smell that's positive and goes to your limbic system, you feel pleasure. So everything hits the physical body. So now it's almost as if you are seeing the world through the lenses of the physical body. And you start experiencing, let go of those lenses, and that's what is hard. Because you let go of these lenses of the physical brain, but then what? There is a tiny moment of a gap. How tiny? Tiny. To the point that most people don't even notice. You are here, you are there. It's a continuum. But there is a moment in which we are thinking inside the brain, and then we are thinking outside the brain. You are not being able to cope well with this fraction of second that sometimes stays for long until the fraction of second happens. But that moment means I took off the glasses or the vision with my physical body, and now I'm going to put another one. Most people who feel afraid of leaving the body, that's what they are afraid of the transition. And I can understand this very well because I had this for some time. And I'll tell you why I had this. Perhaps it's similar to your case, and my case can help you figure out yours. I had many experiences when I was young, even from childhood. The out-of-body experience were always positive. But there was a period of time in which I would feel some spirits not so good around. They were part of the house I was living in at that time. My parents had just moved, and that was very fearful. So I would feel terrified. Okay, I grew up, we changed from one house to another, we moved, from one house to another, everything seemed okay, but that left on me almost like a conditioning, an impression, an automatic reaction that whenever I sense energies, it can be that, it can be dangerous. What's going to happen later? Who is going to be around? Because I was a child, that's how I could discern all of that. So it took a long time for me to be able to, not spontaneously, but at will, to practice a technique and to go through this phase and say, no, it's okay. I'm grown up. I know what's going on. And I am in life to live it. I am here to experience life. This is part of life. So after I started studying these and learning techniques, and especially the velo technique, because the velo technique makes us feel strong, puts our our energy body in a type of coherence. It's more cohesive, and it gives us great strength. After that, I had a little period that I needed to do some sort of desensitization. Hope I'm pronouncing correct or creating here a word, because I was very sensitive to any type of experience that would mean I would be in more clear lucid contact with these non-physical presences, spirits. But after trying, and okay, then again, another day, I could manage to go through it. Now, what I'm trying to bring here is tips and suggestions I have for you. Number one, evaluate a little bit your background. Was your family religious? How was the place, energetically speaking, that you used to live in? Nice light energies, or sometimes there would be different types of energy. And the different types of energies is what's common for most cases and most people, of course. But examine that. And also examine what sort of experience you have had when you were a child. Were they too strong, impactful, traumatic in any sense? Or were you confused, puzzled with them? That's enough to be called a trauma. Trauma doesn't mean necessarily something negative. Now, on top of this, that is the conditioning, comes something that you bring here, that is the instinct. So you have to go back a little to see where the conditioning comes from. Because I know from what you ask me and report and our contacts in the channel that you are knowledgeable enough of these things not to be afraid. However, the reaction comes automatically. So try to picture how that automatic reaction came to be established. That may give you some tips on which measure will be the best. It's always very difficult to say because each person has a different history in this sense, context. Because for some people, the type of strategy that they will use to overcome this phase, this temporary fear or automatic reaction, is one. Whilst for another person, who can be same age, same everything, but the person is different. The energetic environment is different. The previous lives are different. So it's not so much the physical condition, but the inner core of the person. Someone else may have completely different response to different stimuli and previous experience. So then we have to observe what would be the strategy here. But you have a lot of information. I hope you can put together this and devise a technique for yourself. Because in many cases it's hard for me to answer because I cannot know all of the details. I would typically ask loads of questions here, Mohammed, to give you more direct tips and strategies and methods for you to follow step by step. But in this case here, besides the conditioning, what I wanted to add that I was saying a while ago is instinct. Our body has an instinct to survive. So you imagine being in control of the body, it's super important. The moment we start letting go, the physical body, let me put this, the genetical memory, the part of us that is just instinct, it may take over. So it is a kind of a fight between our lucidity, us as consciousness, as being, as selves, with this brain and all of the automatic reactions that we have. Okay, Mohammed, your question was very interesting and motivated me here to discuss a lot of things, but I thought this was very important to go in details to all of you here because this is the case of many people. Is that right? Is it your case? Those of you who are watching, let me know if you face similar situations in which you are almost there, you know you can leave the body, you are already with some of the sensations, but you don't manage to go further. Or when you start improving, you bring yourself back automatically. So this is important. And then we have Isabella. Our time is getting short. I'll try to answer shortly, but I prefer to give complete, proper answers. I think all of you who are here with me, you deserve it. And that's why you are here. So, and I know the explanation I give to one person works for another. So I prefer answering well than going, right? So that was my attempt here. Isabella, thank you for your question. Isabella says, how do people that move too much while sleeping or those who have somnambulism, astral projection? Okay, I think I understand now what you mean. How do people who move too much or have somnambulism, astral travel or astral project, how can they, right, Isabella? Since I don't think they can really relax their bodies, where would be their consciousness? Somnambulism, Isabella, as the condition of moving too much, it's very much a physiological condition. It's produced by the body. There is some sort of mechanism in the brain that when we sleep, this mechanism turns on like an automatic defense for the body. So you may sleep or dream, that you are running or fighting, but your body stays still. Some people, that mechanism fails sometimes. For some people, more often than others. And then they dream of running and they kind of move in bed. But others, is just their physiology, metabolism, and the way they sleep that they tend to turn and toss too much in bed. These things are not an impediment for the astral travel at all. Because when we have these phases of sleep, and all of us, when we sleep, we have different phases. The astral projection, characteristically, the spontaneous one, happens more in a given specific phase of our sleep. So in that phase, the person is not moving. Nobody's moving every minute throughout the night. Just moments. But imagine that the moments in between, yes, the person leaves the body. It's not only that the person can, but the person does. Now, if this is the case of someone who would try a technique to leave the body, this person would need to learn how to stop that excessive activity of the physical body in order to be able to live consciously. But that's one of the challenges that we have, right? And that is part of us. Shall we go to the next? We have here Ana Martins. Thank you, Ana. Asking us. She's writing in Portuguese. No problem. I will translate. Okay? She says, lately my experiences, they all start in my room, in my bedroom. But sometimes I manage to go out of the bedroom in the experience. But I'm not being able to go far from my body or my bedroom. It seems almost as if I lost the ability to visit other places. From the way you say here, Anna, I believe you have before had projections in which you had flow around and visit places, right? This here normally happens when we are in a phase that is different. It's either more tense, or we need to work more with energies before having the out-of-body experience or before going to sleep, because that will make our energy more flexible. The energy that connects the physical and the non-physical body. And by making it more flexible, when we have the projection, we are able to go further easily. Sometimes it's so natural, as you probably know, that we detach and we leave. But what you are describing here is very common. It can happen a lot, and there's nothing wrong. That does not mean you lost the ability, not at all. Next time, you try to work with energy outside the body. But make sure you are very conscious, because you do not want to just work with energy and come back. But if perhaps you do a velo technique outside the body, you can make these energies lighter, or the energy that connects the physical and non-physical body, lighter, less rigid, and that will give you more freedom. Try that, Anna, and then you tell us how it worked. Okay? Thank you for your question. I have here Impossible Visits, wonderful name, saying, why is it not easier to prove to the world the OBE is real just by a simple experiment? Have someone leave their bodies and accurately report information from another place. Should be feasible, no? Yes, it's not only feasible, as there are many real cases that are indisputable. But when we create a scientific experiment, those who are sure that we do not know what we are talking about, and those who are sure the out-of-body experience doesn't exist and it cannot be, and those who have convictions that do not allow them to see the evidence, they interpret the evidence in a different way as we interpret. So my effort whenever I see a case is to see, is this a dream? Does this person knows what they are saying, he or she is saying? Is it true? Because look, I can come here and tell you anything. You are going to believe or not. But basically, that is not a fact. Those of us who understand really the out-of-body experience, we read an account, like here from Alexei, and I know every word is exactly truthful to what he experienced. Why? Sometimes I hear other people telling their experience and I say, not really, it doesn't come with energies and doesn't make sense, because if this happened, this doesn't make sense. And there are some accounts that I have published that I help people to see, look, something here is not working well. This is not a projection, or at least not a lucid one. Because if this happened, this wouldn't make sense in this environment. It's the same thing as saying, look, I was flying from London to New York, but while I was in the middle of the flight, I just decided to stop by a restaurant I like in London and made some shoppings to put different things in my bag. Does it make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. It's the same here. Those who understand what the out-of-body experience is like, and those who understand what the non-physical environment is like, we can tell. But you imagine that if we devise an experiment, which we already did, I have an experiment that I have published, and I did the experiment together with Wagner Allegretti, who is my partner. It was published in a journal. We presented in a conference. We presented many of these experiments. But for that to be accepted, it would have to be a 100% hit. But it cannot be. Because if people try to leave the body, imagine yourself. From the X number of times we try to leave the body, we managed in, what, 5%? 1%? 10% of those different times we tried? So it's not as simple, because people would point out to the cases that the out-of-body experience didn't happen, or the person could not see whatever was the target place. And the lack of understanding of how the experience happens and how we can tell the difference between a remote viewing, an out-of-body experience, a telepathic communication, because all of those are real, a clairvoyance. So we need to tell the difference and to know how each of these phenomena work, to be able to interpret them properly and then make sense of it. So it's been quite some time that we gave up trying to prove to the world. But we try to study to be sure that whoever is open to see the experience and examine it, it makes sense. Like Robert Krukel that I told all of you about in the beginning of our talk. He didn't have experiences, but he went to examine them with open mind to see what was real, what was not. And he comes back at the end of his research saying, there is something here. This cannot be coincidence. These cases are too interesting to be coincidence. So in other words, our method, the ontology, what we base to be proof and what we base to be a real scientific experiment nowadays does not allow space for studying the out-of-body experience. Having said that, I want to make a huge, big parenthesis here, because there are so many very serious, renowned scientists studying the out-of-body experience that it's unimaginable. But we don't know about them. We know about those who are people who are, how would I say it, just public communicators. They just tell their experience and comment how things were, but they are not properly what we would call a scientist examining the whys. Those guys, they are just studying in their labs or in their houses, but there are many. And I have contact with many. And I try to bridge the two things, the experience, the explanation, teaching people, and the experimentation. But look, this what you are saying have been done many times and many very, very interesting results. Still, it falls in empty ears. I am sure we all can relate to that. There are so many things nowadays that are scary that we see science pointing to, we see the document, we see the actual evidence, but people choose to think whatever. They choose to believe whatever they can grasp. That is the thing. If the people cannot grasp it, So let's focus on having nice experience, you and I, and then we grow and we help others, and we talk to those who are open-minded. Those who are not, that's it. It will take time for the scientific method of science, or what is the ontology, what people believe to be scientific, change. But we are working towards that. And I think we are this close. Do you agree? I think we are this close. And I hope nothing turns us back. And we are this close because there are many experiments that have been done. But in all of those experiments, it's important that they are serious. Sometimes there are people who just start making statements and claiming things that they cannot know. And all of the crazy fantasies, instead of helping to bring light towards this subject, on the contrary, it hinders the progress of the knowledge in this area of spirituality, just for a lack of a better word. So that's it, a challenge. Thank you for your question. I love this topic. But what can we do, right? And then I have here Julie. Julie is asking us, and maybe I stop with Julie. I will answer Julie and one more, and then I stop. Is that okay with you guys? And we go back another day to cover your questions here. Julie is saying, I have been out once as a floating mist above my body. How nice, Julie. Even though I practice often, I am always either falling into sleep or too awake. That is tragic, and that's what happens to 99% of people who try to leave their bodies. Here is another difficulty for the experiments. Julie says, I can't seem to find the balance needed to exist. Any advice? Yes, Julie. I just have one video that I am editing that is to start training how to let the brain start sleeping or fall asleep whilst we don't. What you are describing is very characteristic because we are used to be thinking and lucid and awake. Until then, we need to relax, or we relax spontaneously and our mind shuts down. It's almost like an association that we do between being aware and being the body. And that creates a habit. We need to break this habit. When we do our trainings in the consciousness development program, we explain that a lot. Because when we teach the different projective exercises for our participants to leave the body and follow that, what we explain is you need to be able to manage just the level, the threshold between falling asleep and being awake. So you probably are here doing the technique and aiming at being lucid and observing it happen. So I'm going to propose to you that you check the video that I'm going to publish. It's just in a few days, so that I don't have to repeat here the same that is there. But when you do the exercise, then based on that, you will try to keep yourself on that threshold between asleep and awake. So what you will do is that you observe your body, and then you notice that you are almost falling asleep, but naturally you come back. Allow it. There will be days that you tried and you just fall asleep. No problem. That's okay. Because it's better this than you being too awake. So the days you fall asleep means you really relaxed enough and deeply. You just did not manage to stay conscious throughout that moment. But being completely awake is not the way either. For us to leave the body consciously, no. When we leave the body consciously, I want to repeat here for everyone, we are fully aware. We are fully conscious. We are not sleeping, or we cannot be sleeping for the experiences in which they are conscious from the beginning. However, that does not mean our body is active or our brain waves are at a high activity level. Normally we are with lower brain waves and very low, under alpha sometimes. But how can we be in a very deep alpha or under alpha waves and still conscious? This is possible. This is one of the keys. It's not the only key. There are some elements for the out-of-body experience that they have to be there. But from your description, that is the key that you need here. So play a little bit more with that moment. And I know that I'm going to end up falling asleep. But now I'm just playing with this transition. And I'd rather stay there, and maybe I start leaving the body, and I was not so conscious. That is better than being too awake, and you said here, too awake, right? So I hope this helps you, Julie. There are so many situations here, but from your description, I think that's what it is. Modaris tells us, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct, Modaris, beautiful name. What is sleep paralysis? Is it tied to astral projection? People like Robert Monroe talk about there being a creator or engine to everything from his astral experience. Have you encountered something like this? There are two questions. So, starting with the second one. No, I never encountered something as a creator or an engine. I see from what we can observe, like people before they are born, situations of some people in between lives, or when we have experience that we go out of the planet, there are some things that we observe and we say, there is a pretty darn intelligent mechanism here. But was it created? But if this was created, does that mean we see everything and this is what's to be created? What if what we see is just a small fragment of the real reality and we are worried about how it was created? But in truth, once we understand more this reality, we start grasping a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one. So we do not know what reality is yet. But we do meet outside the body consciousnesses, beings that are much more advanced in terms of their personal traits, their skills, the way they see lives, the way they can master energies and master all of the different levels of dimension, how much they can understand life and what this is about, much more than us. This, yes, this we can see. And your first question, is sleep paralysis tied to the out-of-body experience? Yes. 100% of the cases, no. There could be cases that this is a physiological problem. But in my experience, I have heard so many people describe sleep paralysis, so many, and I never met one in which the situation was due to a physical problem, which makes me think that whatever can create a true sleep paralysis in the physical body, it's a very rare condition. Whilst, and here comes the point, in a survey that we did about the out-of-body experience, we checked that sleep paralysis, or we learned that sleep paralysis is one of the most common sensations that people have. And the sleep paralysis happens when we are half in, half out. We are kind of stuck in between. And it's short, but it can be puzzling. What is strange about the sleep paralysis is that sometimes in that in between, people can sense their physical bodies, can be aware of the physical reality. At the same time, they can be aware of the non-physical, spiritual reality around. And sometimes there can be wonderful energies around, but sometimes there can be nasty energies around. Okay, guys. I'm going to answer one more. Can I? You hold there with me? We are 4 minutes to get to an hour and a half. So maybe I answer one in 4 minutes and we go to an hour and a half of live. Sorry. Laura is asking us, sometimes as I fall asleep, I will hear a very loud sound, almost like a large freighter ship coming into port. The metal scraping metal. It wakes me up, of course. Is this the phenomenon of out-of-body experience? It is related because there are events, and this is when it happens, it's very impactful, as you were describing. So people either don't have it or they have it very vividly, which is your case. There is one event that happens there that when our brain, physical one, and the non-physical brain, meaning the non-physical head, the head of our astral body, they start to get slightly non-aligned. It's a matter of non-alignment to start with. And a small non-alignment until a certain point, it's a full non-alignment, right? And the full one, lucid, is what we want. But when this small non-alignment starts happening, there are a number of different sensations that we may have. And some of these sensations can be very, very objective. And sometimes we hear sounds similar to this. We call it intracranial sounds, meaning so there are sounds inside of your head, kind of. But they are not real sounds because you are not really hearing them. But to you, it's like a sound. So it's an interpretation of your brain of something that's happening there. I would also point out briefly here that in many cases people experience this concomitantly at the same time as with the vibrational state. So there's a huge vibration and then comes that huge sound. In your case, the sound comes more strongly or first. This is absolutely natural, and what I suggest you do is that you get used to that, to a point that this comes and you just don't change not even a fragment of your inner condition. Because if the experience is moving forward and you think, wow, this, oh, nice. Oh, what is this? Interesting. Oh, so strong. Anything that changed, that perfect balance that you had that was producing the non-alignment of your non-physical body or astral body. So that's what I suggest to you. Get used. So when it comes, you know, when you live in a street that cars pass by the whole time, they don't call your attention anymore. That's more or less what we want here. Not because you will repress or ignore. No. You will observe, you will notice, you will use it, you will learn from it. But you won't allow it to take you out of that perfect condition that you had. I suggest to you guys who are here, if you have not seen one video that I published that I call it 6 New Strategies for Astral Travel, something like this, and I call it Nancy's Technique because it's a technique that I use and I have created for myself when I was very young. So take a look at that. Because experiences like these that Laura is describing may be useful for us to develop a technique customized for ourselves to leave the body. So, okay, guys, that's wonderful. Let me take a look here at YouTube to see all of you and see how we are going. Let me tell you something. Angelica is going to put some links there for you, and you will take a look at the description that I have. If you want to have my book, that is Vibrational State and about the Velo technique, you can buy it. It's on Amazon. It's interesting reading, but it's not a pocket book. It's a 500-page book with 15 years of research. But there are information there that you won't find anywhere else, and that can help you understand your own experiences, in case you are looking for understanding of phenomena such as the vibrational state, balancing your energy, this sort of thing. Also, if you are interested in developing your astral projections and understanding the non-physical world, a lot of the knowledge that we have amassed throughout this year is introduced in a very broad way, and in some aspects deep as well, in the program that we call Consciousness Development Program. This is not my program, this is not for me, this is IAC's International Academy of Consciousness. I created the program, I taught the program, because trying to contribute with science, we contribute to have an organization that can put all of us together with the same purpose, not being limited by whatever we are allowed to study or to say in a university or whatever. So that's why we do what we do. And I suggest, because that is an excellent program, in case you are looking for something like this. It's fully online, so you can take from the comfort of your house. Unfortunately, you will see me many times because I am one of the instructors, but you will get familiar with other instructors of the IEC as well, in case you choose to do it. If any of you want some private sessions to discuss something, I am here for you. You have all the information there, but I want to finish by saying the out-of-body experience is natural. Here in our account that we read is a proof of this. Even people who never studied, they can have the experience. Trust yourself. And more than just asking others and comparing your experience with other people's experience, observe how you sense it, how lucid you were. And little by little, you will get to understand all of these different conditions. There is one video that I have done, which I like very much, that is how to listen to other people's experience. There you go. Because many times we tend to compare and we tend to look for experience similar to what someone else has sensed or experienced. And as we did here, that is very useful for us to study. But if you were there in Alexei's place, probably you would describe it different. Not because the experience is different, but because if we ask the same person to describe the lobby of a huge mall, each of them will pay attention to different details. For them, it's too loud music, noisy. For someone else, they love the loud music, and they will react different. So the environment, the atmosphere, the place is objective, but how we see it, meaning what calls our attention and how that affects us, that's what is different. And that's why we need to study the out-of-body experience, to be able to understand what we experience, why, and to interpret so that we can grow from the point that we have in our experiences. Anyway, I loved sharing here with you some of my thoughts, and I appreciate so much you being here and listening to these ideas and some of these experiences that I have had. I'm looking here at your names and how you are sharing with me. Wonderful, guys. So I look forward to seeing you in the next one. You please write to me in the comments. How would you feel about us doing similar chats, discussing other experience? Would you suggest a different topic? Let's integrate. I love the sense of being more with you. And for some of our chats, let's do it in a way in which you can participate, maybe via Zoom or something. It would be lovely if we could see each other as well. Is that right? So I will try to make it possible at some point. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Wonderful out-of-body experiences to all of you. See ya.